Waiting at New York's airport didn't present an appealing way to spend the evening, as Max reflected while watching the boarding process for the flight he hoped would take him back to Charlotte. Max, along with his two sisters, managed a small pharmaceutical company their father had established years before. Their father had developed a few critical but underutilized drugs that brought profitability to the business, though they barely supported any growth. After the death of his parents, Max had been in New York negotiating the sale of their company to a major pharmaceutical corporation. The deal was finalized today by Max and his group of lawyers and representatives, leaving the last bits of paperwork in the hands of the lawyers. Max was eager to get back home tonight, though it appeared doubtful. The final flight to Charlotte was fully booked, placing him third on the waiting list. He hadn't called his wife, Camilla, uncertain about what to communicate. He found a spot at the bar, which offered a clear view of the gate, and nursed his second gin and tonic, mulling over the transaction and how the proceeds over $10 million for himself would be split with his sisters, in addition to a well-compensated transition period at the acquiring large pharmaceutical company, heralding a change in lifestyle for him and Camilla. Their twin daughters were almost self-sufficient, both in their junior year at Duke University, where the high tuition fees were a financial burden. But this was set to change with the conclusion of the pharmaceutical deal. As the boarding neared its end and the gate agents were escorting the last few passengers onto the plane, a sudden update to the boarding sign showed Max's name on the standby list. He threw the cash on the bar, signaled the bartender, who acknowledged with a thumbs up, grabbed his briefcase and carry-on, and made for the gate. The gate agent handed him his boarding pass, informing him and two others that a party of 4 who had checked in online failed to show up, thus securing their seats. Max rushed to the aircraft with his newfound companions, and upon reaching the gate, discovered he was allocated a first-class seat, a good sign, he believed. "I've boarded. I'm heading home in first class a day early. Maybe it's a sign the deal with the pharmaceutical company will be successful." After boarding, the door closed, and a flight attendant offered him a drink as they headed to the runway. Feeling entitled to another drink, he accepted another gin and tonic and soon drifted into dreams of a future where flying first class with Camilla was the norm. Waking up to the plane's landing, he made his way to the taxi stand for a ride home. He had left his pickup at the airport a few days earlier, but now, exhausted, slightly inebriated, and mindful of the late hour, he decided it was too late to request a pickup from Camilla. They lived somewhat distant from Charlotte, making the taxi ride long enough for him to fall asleep again. The driver had to wake him upon arrival. Max paid him, including a generous tip, and staggered out of the taxi. After a lengthy, taxing day and night, he anticipated curling up in bed with Camilla as the taxi departed, and he turned towards their home. What he encountered stopped him in his tracks and instantly sobered him up a luxurious gold Mercedes parked next to his side of the garage. The car exuded elegance, as he felt all Mercedes did. The house was dark, given it was after midnight, and Max paused for a moment. He had spoken to Camilla around noon from his attorney's office, and she hadn't mentioned having guests over that late. He tried not to jump to the worst conclusions, hoping to picture a pleasant scenario that would soon have him snuggling with a warm, sleepy Camilla. Yet his mind didn't lean towards such optimism, so he slowly made his way to the door in the hallway that connected the garage to the house. Unlocking it, he entered the quiet home, moving more slowly through the kitchen and up the stairs to the bedroom he shared with Camilla. The bedroom door was slightly open, not expecting any visitors, and Max entered before it closed behind him. There was no other way to put it. His cognitive functions paused, his breathing ceased, and even his heartbeat seemed to stop. He saw what he believed to be unthinkable. Camilla was uncovered, lying on her side of the bed, with one arm around a man who was also asleep, faintly smiling in his sleep. Max was immobilized for what seemed an eternity, but eventually his thoughts resumed. He looked again at Camilla's hand on the man, hearing them both snore. This devastated Max's heart. Up until that evening, the sound of Camilla's snores had been a source of happiness for him. Her snoring was gentle, resembling more of a soothing hum. Max interpreted her snoring as a sign of her feeling utterly safe, deeply engrossed in the peaceful slumber that stemmed from sharing both a bed and a life with him. The soft hum was often the last thing he heard before falling asleep himself, but those days were now behind him. He would no longer hear her snore, nor would he share a bed with her again. Yet, amidst his sorrow, Max's thoughts began to clear. He noticed a pile of the man's clothing neatly arranged on a chair where Max had frequently sat. A deep-seated rage started to burn within him. He tidied his trousers and collected his wallet and car keys, then stopped to ponder his next steps. He thought about grabbing the tennis racket from the closet in the bedroom to confront the unwelcome guest. The thought of confronting Camila crossed his mind as well. Although these actions might bring momentary relief, they could also lead to serious repercussions for Max down the line. An alternative plan started to form in his head. He pulled out his phone and began taking incriminating photos as the idea developed further. Once he finished taking pictures, Max collected all of the stranger's garments and footwear. The stranger was noticeably bigger. Max, standing at 5'8" and weighing roughly 160 lbs, observed the intruder to be about 4 to 5 inches taller and approximately 50 lbs heavier. Using a tennis racket as a means of defense, even temporarily, seemed impractical. Clutching the clothing and shoes, Max cast one last glance at his wife, his once adored partner, the mother of his beloved daughters, and fortified his heart against the affection that had nurtured him for more than 20 years. He left the bedroom without shedding a tear and proceeded downstairs to exit the house. The car's key fob beeped, unlocking the doors of the Mercedes. Max placed his briefcase and gym bag inside and climbed into the driver's seat. He had never been particularly fond of luxury vehicles, but as he settled into the Mercedes, he discovered a newfound appreciation for it. He acquainted himself with its features, engaged the transmission, and drove off. Roughly a mile later, Max pulled over to examine the contents of the stranger's wallet. It contained typical items: some money, business cards identifying him as Franklin Thompson, a senior sales manager at a local Mercedes dealership, and a driving license with a Charlotte address. Considering the possibility of Franklin having a family in Charlotte, Max recognized the potential for causing significant turmoil for him and possibly for Camila too. However, at that moment, Max was consumed by fatigue and drove to the closest motel for rest. Camila Tronder was always circumspect. She knew she wasn't as intellectually gifted as her husband Max, but her cautious nature had kept her affair with Franklin Thompson hidden from Max for nearly half a year. She assumed Max was still in New York as she woke up next to Franklin the following morning. Franklin was satisfactory in bed, not quite to Max's level, but his demeanor outside the bedroom couldn't hold a candle to her husband's. He reminded her too much of a car salesman, she thought, deciding it was time to end the affair. Franklin had started to become possessive. He had insisted on spending the night, and she had agreed, but this would be the last time she allowed it. She planned to continue her life with Max and having another man in there. The marital bed, unbeknownst to Max, was exceedingly disrespectful. She resolved to call Franklin later that day to gently yet firmly let him know their relationship was over. Then she headed for the shower. Returning to the bedroom as she was getting dressed, Franklin came out of the bathroom with only a towel around his waist. He stopped for a moment and then asked Camila, "Where did you put my clothes?" "What? I haven't moved them," she answered. "Where do you plan on going tonight? I left them right there on this chair, but now my clothes are missing. Did you take them to the spare room with you?" "She has to be around here somewhere." He faltered, retracing his steps to the guest room before quickly coming back. "Nope, nothing there. Absolutely nothing," he muttered, his voice trailing off as he confronted the disappearance of his attire. "Maybe you left it all downstairs after we got back last night," Camila offered, her tone reflecting a hint of irritation, pondering if they had indulged in too much alcohol the night before. "I'm sure I didn't, yet I suppose I should go check," Franklin conceded, exiting the bedroom. Shortly, he dashed up the stairs again. Camila. My vehicle, my outfits, they're not downstairs. Someone must have entered last night, taken my attire and made off with my vehicle. Ah, blast it. What's going on? Camila inquired, perplexed by Franklin's narrative. How could both his outfits and vehicle vanish? They were home the whole time. Is it possible they were burglarized? Suddenly, Camila collapsed onto the bed. Now, it was Franklin who was confounded. What Camila found it challenging to formulate a response, struggling to catch her breath, let alone speak. Franklin, could it have been Max? She barely uttered. What if he came back from New York while we were sleeping? What if he's the one who took your things and Franklin voiced, sinking beside Camila on the bed. We have to figure out his location. It's possible it was him, but if he's still in New York, then a burglar must have gotten in, which means we need to inform the police. I need to get back my belongings and my vehicle. This vehicle. If we get the police involved, they will ask about the owner. And it's listed under my wife's name for certain tax advantages. His voice dwindled as he imagined scenarios ranging from bad to catastrophic. I'll ring his office. His assistant usually arrives quite early, and she'll know his current location, Camila said, reaching for her phone to dial Max's office. Although it wasn't yet 8, Max's assistant answered promptly. This is Max's office. How may I help? Hi, Sheila. It's Camila. I know it's early and I'm trying to find Max. He didn't check in last night, so have you been in contact with him, Camila? It's still quite early and the New York team worked late. They're expected to start later today. I talked to Max yesterday around 6 before I left. He said they were about to close a deal today. That's comforting to hear. So, he's definitely still in New York, right? Yes, I'm certain, and I look forward to his call once they're back at the legal office. Could you possibly get him to call me? Only if he's not swamped. I realize the importance of this deal. Anyway, take care, goodbye. After hanging up, Camille briefed Franklin, indicating Max was indeed in New York, hence they should dial 911 to report a break-in and the theft of a vehicle. Camille, what do we tell them? That your partner's clothes were pilfered from your bedroom and his automobile taken from your drive. Honestly, what's going on? We're really in a bind. All right, I understand. Let's think this through. How about I drive you to your place, you change there, and you report the theft as if it happened there, while your spouse was dropping off the kids at school. And maybe leave out the part about the stolen clothes. That might be more difficult to explain than a stolen car. Except, I told my wife yesterday that I was off to Atlanta for a meeting on the new Mercedes S-Class and wouldn't be back until noon. All right, but we can wait until around noon, by which time you'd have supposedly returned. You came home, left your keys in the vehicle since it was just a quick stop before heading to the dealership, and that's when your car was stolen. You know, this might just work. I could also say my wallet was in the car and got stolen too. We can hang around here for a few more hours, and maybe we'll take another shower, possibly together. Franklin, sure. Yeah, I need to call off sick today. Camille was employed as a paralegal at a modest-sized legal firm. The work was fine, if a bit repetitive. She stepped into the hallway to make the call and returned to the bedroom to see Franklin back in bed. Temptation was there, but remembering Max and her recent decision to end the affair, she chose to decline. No, Franklin, she declared, making no move to undress. I think we should end this. It's been an adventure, but it could have been Max last night. We're lucky that's all it was. In essence, an outlaw. Let's attire ourselves and perhaps seize the opportunity for breakfast, Franklin suggested. Examining her, he contemplated convincing her otherwise, but ultimately concurred with her logic. Their fortune had been ample, but it was unwise to tempt fate further. Yes, and with a secretive smile he reminisced about a charming, middle-aged woman who frequently visited the car showroom. Agreed, it was an exceptional journey. Now, regarding our attire. Procuring suitable attire for Franklin was a task. He was significantly bulkier by 50 pounds and taller by 4 inches compared to Max. Camille managed to modify some old sweatpants to fit Franklin by slicing open the waistband and employing strings to snugly tie them around his waist. She also unearthed a sweatshirt that had faded to pink due to a washing mishap. She trimmed the sleeves, adjusted the armholes, and thus Franklin was dressed. She was tempted to comment on the humorous aspect of his outfit, but chose to merely smile warmly upon witnessing his demeanor. They opted to spend time watching television until it was appropriate to head to Franklin's residence. That morning, precisely when Franklin discovered his clothing and vehicle missing, Max pulled into the driveway of the address on Franklin's driving license. It was a delightful residence, with a small bicycle leaned against the garage. Max lingered in his vehicle momentarily, reflective yet tearless. His overnight motel stay had elapsed quickly, and he hadn't ventured out for a jog until dawn. Surprisingly, he didn't feel as desolate as expected. Perhaps he was in a state of shock. Approaching the doorstep, he extracted Franklin's wallet, displaying the driver's license, and pressed the doorbell. An attractive, albeit somewhat anxious, young woman in her 20s answered. Max, attired in a recently purchased suit from New York, his white shirt now wrinkled and devoid of a tie, hoped his appearance wasn't intimidating as he presented Franklin's driver's license and gestured towards the gold Mercedes. Before he could utter a word, the woman briskly closed the door on him, only to reopen it moments later, phone in hand. I'm prepared to call emergency services immediately unless you reassure me my husband is safe, she declared. On my phone, I have a photo of your husband and my spouse intimately together, asleep and undressed. Honestly, I find no fault with your husband or my spouse, for that matter. Should you feel compelled to call emergency services, please do, and I'll wait in the car. After a brief exchange of looks, her demeanor softened, allowing him inside. As she began to speak, a child's voice from the kitchen interrupted, calling out for her. Please wait here, I'll be right back, she said, heading towards what Max assumed was the kitchen. He overheard her engaging with at least one child. Returning, she offered him a simple cup of coffee. I hope plain coffee is fine. I need to get the children ready for school and drop them off. I find myself trusting you more than my husband now. Feel free to stay until I get back. Then we can talk more. Fine, Max agreed, recognizing a shared dilemma. He settled in the living room, and shortly after, a woman appeared with two children, introducing him as a friend of their father before departing with the children. Max, while sipping on the subpar coffee, considered contacting his office but decided against it, opting to remain seated. Upon her return, she quickly made her way upstairs to the living room. She soon came down, looking rejuvenated, with her hair tidily done and lips lightly colored. Introducing herself, she apologized for the earlier commotion. I'm Molly Thompson, currently married to Franklin Thompson, who seems to be involved with your wife, she explained. Max couldn't help but laugh at her wording, finding comfort in their shared humor. Indeed, you are spot on about our situation. My name is Max Tronder, with Camila Tronder being my current spouse, he shared, recounting the events of the previous evening, which moved Molly to tears. I'm planning to divorce Camila, and I believe the photos will help achieve a just settlement. I can send them to your phone if needed. Yes, I think I should have them, Molly responded, looking distant. He was about to send the photos when she stopped him. Wait, don't send them. Seeing them would imprint them in my memory forever. Keep them, and if need be, I can contact you, agreed. Max consented, but noted my employment might end soon, and my current residence may change. I'll provide you with the contact information of my lawyer, who can offer assistance with photography or any guidance related to divorce matters. Thank you, was Molly's appreciative response, before she inquired, so what's our next step? Are you planning to return the car or wait until Franklin decides to approach you? Despite putting on some weight, he was supposed to be in Atlanta attending a meeting about cars and was staying there overnight. He should be returning this afternoon. Interestingly, I've grown fond of this car, never having driven a Mercedes before. I'm inclined to keep it until I'm compelled to return it. Your husband's name? I must know, Molly said, perhaps laughing, with Max joining in, both finding solace in the shared moment of humor. In fact, the car is in my name. Molly clarified, for reasons related to taxes, I assume it's probably due to depreciation benefits. Franklin, or as I should now refer to him, Had the car registered in my name since I use it more often? She took a moment, then thoughtfully added, since the car legally belongs to me, I can authorize you to use it, and the police can confirm with me if you're ever stopped. Max liked the idea but kept quiet as Molly was still thinking through the strategy. She also mentioned the recent spate of burglaries in their area. You have Franklin's keys and clothes. If he discovers the spare key we hid in the backyard is missing upon his return, he may try to break in, and with our alarm set to instantly alert, it's bound to attract considerable police attention, Molly detailed. I think I'm falling for you all over again. You're amazing. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Franklin might as well delay his return until the kids and I get back from school later today. I could pick them up and we could spend some time at the park, giving him plenty of chances to complicate things for himself. No matter how things go, keep me in the loop, especially if he finds himself in trouble with the law, and let me know when you need your car back. I don't want you getting into any trouble. It's time to conclude this. You need to go. And I do too, Max said, then drove off in his impressive gold Mercedes, pondering over the price of a similar model in a more attractive color. Max received the authorization note from Molly, assuming she would then go on to fetch the hidden key, set the alarm, and leave for the day. Camille and Franklin arrived at Franklin's home around noon. Camilla quickly dropped him off and left, keen on avoiding any delays. Franklin, hoping the door might be unlocked because of Molly's potential presence, approached the front door but was worried she might actually be there. Finding it locked, he hurried to the backyard to the spot where they hid the spare key, only to discover it missing. Oh, he sighed, looking towards the back of the house, contemplating whether to force his way in. Finding the back door also locked, he felt forced to consider breaking in. He evaluated the windows on the back wall, trying to decide which would be the easiest to enter. He stopped at the family room window, the largest at the back, realizing that breaking it would allow easier access. He broke off a branch from a tree he had planned to trim and assessed the window. Being without shoes, he had to think about how to avoid the broken glass. He placed 2 chairs from the back porch next to the window, thinking he could use them to climb over and avoid the glass, then carefully make his way into the living room. After a few deep breaths, he threw the branch through the window of the family room, breaking it with a loud noise, which was immediately followed by the blaring sound of the home security alarm. To make matters worse, a police patrol was on his street at that moment, following Molly's warning to the local police station about potential burglaries in the area that morning. Damn, Franklin muttered, attempting to quickly climb through the chairs into the house to turn off the alarm, but he wasn't quick enough. Police, stop right there and slowly back away from the house with your hands raised, the officers ordered. Franklin looked back, seeing 2 policemen with their guns pointed at him. He obeyed, only suffering minor cuts on his legs as he stepped down from the chairs and backed away. Let me explain, he began, as a police officer moved to place his arms behind his back and cuff him. Ignoring his attempt at clarification, the officer read him his rights and then asked if he had anything to add. Indeed, this is my home and, well, I've lost my key, so I had to break in to grab some clothes and call my job, the officers, noting Franklin's athletic wear, which seemed an odd choice, then asked him for ID. No, I don't have it with me. My car's gone, along with all my clothes and stuff. I just need to get into my house for some proper clothes. How did you lose your car, sir? Well, I was at a friend's last night, and by morning my car was just gone, disappeared. Did you file a report for your missing car? Maybe you left it somewhere, possibly a bar. Franklin hesitated, unwilling to reveal his activities from the night before or why he hadn't reported his car missing. He wanted to avoid arrest for breaking into his own place, feeling the discomfort of the handcuffs. Suddenly, he had a potentially helpful thought. You could contact my wife, she'll confirm who I am, and maybe you could take me to my office. Someone there might help me get some clothes. He knew he'd face some annoyance at the car dealership, but it was better than getting arrested. An officer took Molly's number from Franklin and called her. Franklin caught bits of the officer's conversation. This is Officer Rhode Island from the Charlotte Police Department. We've detained a man at your address claiming to be your husband. He says he broke into your house after losing his clothes, and yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We'll do that. Thank you, ma'am. The officer turned back to Franklin Leah. Your wife says her husband is in Atlanta, and any break-in should be treated as a burglary. She wants us to lock you up and throw away the key. Tears welled up in Franklin's eyes as he was led to the police car for a ride to the station. Meanwhile, Camila arrived at work late, intent on catching up, her mind on Max for not having heard from him. She tried calling his cell, then his office again. Hello, Sheila, it's Camila. I'm still worried about Max. Have you heard from him? Nothing yet. He's probably still in New York with the lawyers, but it's unlike him not to check in. You sound worried, so I'll call there and get back to you, Sheila offered. Thanks, Sheila. You're incredibly helpful. Soon after, Camila got a call back. Camila, it's Sheila. I talked to a secretary at the law firm, and it turns out Max left late last night for the last flight to Charlotte. I managed to reach him on his phone, and he said he'd call you later. Thanks, Sheila. Thank you, Camila said, hanging up, feeling uneasy. Max, after talking to Sheila, was driving a gold Mercedes to see a divorce lawyer recommended by Fred Thomas, his trusted legal advisor in business, hoping for the same trustworthiness. Mr. Thunder, please take a seat. MS. Reinhardt will be with you shortly, the secretary said. He sat down, finding some comfort in the office's decor, which was neither too lavish nor too simple. His worry subsided slightly when a woman in her 50s, a bit overweight and with distinctly dyed red hair, appeared in the lobby. Mr. Thunder. Max stood, gave a nod, and she began, I'm Anna Reinhardt. Fred told me to take very good care of you. Let's head to my workspace and go over your situation. Max was guided by her into a welcoming, yet modestly adorned office, took coffee offered by her assistant, and relayed his story. He uncovered his wife's betrayal, pursued a divorce, and was intent on protecting his financial interests, particularly the income from the sale of his and his siblings' enterprises. He left out the incident involving the gold-colored Mercedes, though he suspected Anna might find it entertaining. May I call you Max? He affirmed with a nod, and she introduced herself. I'm Anna. Considering everything, your case holds some favorable aspects. Fred informed me about the ownership of your business with your siblings prior to your marriage. Therefore, your stakes are considered personal assets, exempting your wife from any claim over your business's shares or their sale proceeds. Nevertheless, it's imperative that these shares and the proceeds remain separate from any joint accounts with your spouse. This appears sound to me, however. What about our house, retirement savings, and similar holdings? Regrettably, this aspect is less advantageous for you, since your earnings far surpass hers. You'll be responsible for child support for some years. We could potentially avoid allocations to the retirement fund by upping the spousal support. While unattractive, accepting this temporary discomfort averts the more severe long-term consequence of splitting your retirement assets further down the road, and since your kids are in college, no child support is necessary. I assume you're agreeable to handling their remaining college costs. Indeed, I'm fine with that. And the house, the decision on the house is up to you and your spouse. You could choose to sell it and split the proceeds, or one could buy out the other's interest based on the current market value. Following last night's events, my desire for the house has vanished. I doubt Camila can afford to buy my portion. Then it appears selling is our path. Very well, I'll start on the necessary documents. The filing for divorce is quite straightforward, so I can have it prepared by tomorrow morning if you wish, allowing us to deliver it to her by the afternoon. Then, a preliminary agreement could be offered next week. This is an exceptionally quick timeline. Mr. Thunder. Max, consider if time or counseling could. No, forget it. It's just too much for me right now. Less than 24 hours ago, I was thrilled, looking forward to celebrating our business deal with my wife. And here I am, contemplating a divorce. Nevertheless, we must proceed. I'll manage somehow. Understood, but should you change your mind, simply contact me, and we'll explore alternatives. Max thanked her, settled the initial fee, and exited the building. He made his way back to the golden Mercedes, pondering the prior evening's happenings, reminded of his promise to call Camille. She answered from her legal firm's office. "Camilla, it's Max. You were trying to reach me." "Oh, Max, thanks for calling. I've been missing you." "Where are you?" "I'm in Charlotte, Camille." "When did you get back?" Her discomfort noticeably worsened. "I returned last evening, and my distress slightly intensified." Camilla leaned back, realizing the conversation must continue, yet found it hard to find her breath. "Camilla, I'm going to end the call now." "No, Max, no," she managed to say faintly. "Please, can we meet?" "Even briefly. I need to see you." Max hesitated. This woman was his companion, the mother of his offspring, and had been the most crucial part of his life for over 20 years. "Fine, Camilla. Let's meet at the Center Cafe at 6. The tension escalated. Nonetheless, Camilla acknowledged the Center Cafe was where she and Max first met years ago, amidst friends. Since then, the cafe had become a meaningful spot for them. Now, she was anxious about Max's choice of location. She reluctantly agreed. "Max, I'll be there. And please know I'm sorry, and I love you." Max disconnected. Overwhelmed by her emotions, Camilla sat down, the situation intensifying. Arriving early at the cafe, Max was yet to show. She ordered wine, sitting there, engulfed in guilt for the person she perceived herself to be. Her significant early romantic experiences were with towering, muscular football players in college, a stark contrast to her high school days, leaving a lasting impact on her. When Max appeared, she thought she had overcome the craving to be dominated. Max was all she could wish for: enthusiastic, loving, a wonderful father to their girls, and a steadfast breadwinner. This would have been enough had it not been for the return flight from the West Coast to Charlotte. Max had a meeting scheduled with a drug company to discuss a novel medicine, and she accompanied him for a getaway before his business commitments commenced. Flying back solo on an evening flight, she found herself seated beside a burly man, the head coach of a nearby NFL team. They engaged in conversation, indulged in too much alcohol, and she ended up dozing off, her head resting on his shoulder. She woke to his hand under her skirt, resting between her thighs. Reflecting on that incident, she acknowledged she should have screamed, or at least removed his hand. But Camilla remained passive, and rather than feeling remorse, she was relieved that Max wouldn't return until much later that week, giving her and her body time to recover. She harbored feelings of guilt towards this coach, who was in Charlotte for only a single season, and Camilla might have resumed her role as a faithful wife had it not been for his introduction of her to a forward from the practice squad before his departure. This player wasn't a celebrated athlete or a rookie, but possessed the same authoritative and assertive nature as the coach. Eventually, Camilla was grateful when feelings of guilt started to emerge. She aspired to be true to Max and terminated her extramarital relationship. By the time their daughters left for college, Camilla thought she had put her adulterous behavior behind her. She deeply loved Max and valued the extra time they spent together with the girls gone. Yet, when Max performed a thoughtful gesture for her, the old temptations resurfaced. He proposed. It was time for her to select a new, opulent vehicle. Unfortunately, she chose to visit the Mercedes dealership, encountering Franklin Thompson there. He didn't sell her the car, but he certainly knew how to seduce her. She recognized it was a blunder, especially since Franklin was not remarkable in bed. She had kept her past affairs secret, believing their marriage remained intact, but now their mutual affection was more robust than before, and she desired to stay true. Choosing not to get involved with someone utterly foolish was the right decision. Letting Franklin spend a night in her matrimonial bed would have been a blatant mistake, even if Max had remained unaware. Yet she had permitted it, and the fear of potential repercussions haunted her. "Hello," Camilla said, Max bringing her attention back. She lifted her gaze to see Max before her, looking noticeably aged since his departure to New York, and she accepted responsibility for that. The remorse ate at her. "Hi, Max. Thanks for being here." I'm struggling to find the words to apologize. "May I ask you something?" he said, sitting down. Oh, Max, not this. If there's any hope for us, digging into questions and answers will obliterate it. Max, let's flee, even briefly, to a Caribbean island where we can reunite, hold each other, where Camila, that's not rational thinking. If you're unable to answer my questions, I'll leave this moment. The attack persisted, yet Camille knew she had to endure the distress and allow Max to process his emotions his way. Maybe, just maybe, he'd find some understanding after his anger. Fine, Max, ask away. Do you know when I got home last night? She pondered over his peculiar question. Not precisely. Her response trailed off. She braced for his follow-up question, and it was precisely that. And upon my arrival home, when I ascended to our bedroom, or what used to be our bedroom, do you know what I discovered? Yes, Max, I can imagine what you might have encountered, and I understand it. Was probably an appalling scene, and I fully take the blame for you having to see that. I'm begging you to just listen to me. Max, I'm truly sorry, so sorry that I won't challenge the divorce you're seeking, if that's your wish. Silence, Camila. Another question, how many men have there been since our marriage? Should you prove dishonest, or if I grow to suspect such dishonesty, I'll rise and leave. Camila's first inclination was towards deceit. However, her second thought considered the risks too great, and her third realized that their marriage was probably beyond saving anyway. 3 individuals, Max, 3 individuals I regret ever crossing paths with. I believe I can discern in your eyes that our relationship is at its end, and I accept that. You deserve someone better than me. I'm willing to do almost anything for us to get another chance, yet I understand if you've decided against continuing with me. Proceed to contact the attorney, Camila. You'll receive the divorce papers tomorrow. Max got up and departed. Camille stayed seated, initially too stunned to shed tears, as she reflected on Max's words. The betrayal felt like a serpent twisting in her gut, leading her to finally break down in tears. As Max left the cafe, he reminisced about their first encounter there years prior, pondering whether this would be their last significant conversation. Intimacy, he mused with bitterness, must be the most excruciating form, to have to listen to your partner confess to infidelities with other men and to catch her with that buffoon Franklin in their bed of all places, snoring no less. How could he ever get past this? He might, just might, come to terms with the thought of 3 unknown men throughout there. Nearly 2-decade relationship, perhaps through therapy and considerable shame on her part. But the image of that scene in their bed was indelible. Their marriage was irrevocably broken, and as he sat in that damned gold Mercedes, he finally allowed himself to cry. It wasn't long before Max realized the sky had darkened. He cleared his nose, wiped his face, and remembered Molly Thompson's advice from that morning, which seemed a lifetime ago. She had counseled against sending her the images of her husband's betrayal with Camila, suggesting that seeing them would only hinder forgiveness. Max decided to call her, share his thoughts, and update her about the Mercedes situation. Hello, Molly picked up. Molly, it's Max Tronder from this morning. Just wanted to check in on you and discuss what to do with the car. Max, I appreciate your call. I'm getting by. Keep the car for the time being. Franklin's in so much hot water, he won't need it anytime soon. Trouble? I hope you didn't hurt him. No, though he might have wished for that. He was arrested for trying to break into our place and allegedly assaulted a police officer. Given his size, the officer had to use a stun gun on him. Then, while detained, something occurred. He's tight-lipped about it, but it seems he was assaulted by another detainee. He refused to talk to me, had to have his brother post bail, making his entire family privy to his predicament. That's quite the situation, Molly. I can't say I sympathize with him, but my heart goes out to you. Not looking at those infidelity photos was definitely the wise decision. Surprisingly, he came back home a few hours ago, remorseful and begging to stay temporarily. Considering we have 2 young children, I'm leaning towards trying to work things out, but it won't be easy for him. His brother, a lawyer, suggested I push for a prenuptial agreement and has offered his help. I'll also be taking over our financial management for the foreseeable future. Franklin's freedoms will be significantly curtailed, and I plan to keep a close eye on his activities. Keep up your efforts, Molly. You have my best wishes. When it's time for the car to be returned, just call. After hanging up, Max felt a slight envy towards Molly. Perhaps Franklin's arrest and subsequent charges, along with his ordeal in jail, had been a strong enough deterrent. Max hoped so for the sake of Molly and their children. He then made his way back to the motel where he was staying, with one final thing to do before trying to rest. He had to call his daughters, Jane and Joan. "Hello, Father." He assumed it was Jane who responded. Even though they were twin sisters, they did not share an identical appearance, yet bore a striking resemblance. Their voices were alike. They both attended a prestigious college and pursued careers in nursing. Fortunately, they did not appear exactly alike. Their relationship was evident, yet they were not unmistakably twins. Max quietly admitted to himself that their non-identical nature was somewhat of a relief, given their knack for collaborating against him. He figured it would be more of a challenge if two identical young ladies were convincing him to buy a car, allow them to come home late, or finance their trip to Florida for spring break, essentially, whatever they wished at that time. "Father, if you would," however, he also silently confessed he enjoyed indulging them. "Jenny, naturally, you're correct. It was a toss-up. What's happening? Here's the thing. Tomorrow's Sunday, and I was thinking of inviting you and your sister to breakfast, or more like brunch, at 11. Do you recall that cafe on 4th Street we all enjoyed? That's perfect for me." 1 second, he detected some background sound. Then she continued, "Joan's on board as well." "May we?" He swiftly interrupted her, remembering their last brunch involved a group of 6 or 7 friends. "How about we keep it to just us 3? "All right, absolutely," Jane agreed. Yet before she could ask more, he cut in, preferring to avoid a long conversation on the phone, which was even harder in person. "I must get going. See you at 11. Love you, and let your sister know I love her too. Goodbye." He concluded the call, wishing she wouldn't reach out to Camila, because if he had brought it up, she would have immediately done so. The next day would come quickly enough. After Max departed the coffee shop, leaving a parting word that might as well have been a hex to consult a lawyer, Camila struggled to stop her weeping. She recognized she had destroyed everything: her marriage, her familial relationships, her entire existence. She understood her daughters, her parents, and all her acquaintances would find out eventually. Likely she would lose Max and their residence. Poor Max, witnessing her in such an incriminating situation with Franklin, must have been heart-wrenching. Camila's weeping continued until a waitress came over to check if she required the lavatory. Camila, managing to suppress her tears, declined and paid the bill, then left for what was soon to no longer be her house. Upon getting home, she found some gin, not enough to knock her out, but too much for planning a strategy to regain Max's affection. After consuming it, she fell asleep, hoping for a miracle to bring her and Max back together. The next morning at 11, Max awaited at the cafe as his daughters made their entrance. He had looked over and sanctioned the draft for the divorce papers early that day, then spent 2 hours driving from Charlotte, using the journey to ponder on how to broach the subject with Jane and Joan. Initially, their gathering went as usual: embraces, questions about their studies and jobs, followed by placing orders, dining and finishing their meal. Then they moved on to a heartfelt discussion. "Dad, we can tell something's wrong," Joan initiated. "You don't look well. Are you here to tell us you're sick, maybe with cancer? And if so, where is Mom?" "Ladies, indeed I have some distressing news, but it's not health-related. Nobody is dying, and it concerns your mum," Jane interjected. "She did something terrible." "Oh no, did she run off with one of her firm's lawyers?" A handsome, athletic guy that either Joni or I should be dating the sisters burst into laughter, amused by the absurdity of the idea, until they realized their father wasn't joining in the laughter. "Dad, surely not." Mom. Joan struggled to express her fear. "Girls, pay attention. Indeed, your mum has changed. She was unfaithful to me. But this doesn't mean she was unfaithful to you too." "That's right, Dad," Joan acknowledged, in tears. "If her affair is ripping our family apart, then she has betrayed us just as much as she has you," the daughters cried, followed by Max starting to weep as well. They rose, making an effort to hug their father and one another at the same time. "We should get out of here," Jane proposed. A few blocks from here, there's a park where we can enjoy more privacy. We attracted a few stares, prompting Max to quickly pay the bill, and then they made their way to the park, each daughter flanking him, all wrapped in a group hug. "Dad, spill the beans," Jane pressed as they settled onto a bench. "We deserve the whole story," indeed, Joan chimed in. "We're mature enough to handle it on our walkover. I was debating what to share with you," Max started. "I agree, you're both adults, and yes, you're right. It turns out your mother has betrayed our family. Sadly, I caught her in our house, in our bed, with another man, and she admitted to having had more affairs. I'm still somewhat in disbelief, but it's clear our marriage can't be repaired. I've already been in touch with a lawyer about divorce, and your mother will be getting the divorce papers today." Their conversation was followed by more tears and a heavy silence as they absorbed the impact of the revelation and pondered the future. "Regardless of the difficulties, your education must come first. I've managed to save enough for both of your final years here at Duke, and should either or both of you want to pursue further education, I believe I can support that too. However, there's one stipulation." They gazed at him, intrigued. "What do you mean I'm prepared to finance your education, but in exchange I expect your full commitment and excellent grades? True, focusing might be challenging considering what your mom did, but you've claimed your adults, and adults, those who are mature and disciplined, can surpass such obstacles." Correct. They exchanged glances, shed tears again, and hugged him. "Yes, Dad, you're the greatest, and will surely not let you down." Joan lifted his spirits, while Jane looked thoughtful. "Dad, Joan's right, will make you proud. But how about you? Are you going to be all right? What are you planning?" A lot goes through one's mind on a 2-hour drive. "Firstly, I knew you girls would react just like this. I have no doubt you'll excel academically, and you'll continue to make me proud. As for me, the ordeal with your mother was a heavy blow. I could have chosen to sink into despair, feel sorry for myself, or try to reconcile with your mum. But I've realized that's not me. I've spent my entire adult life caring for others, starting with my grandparents' business, where I looked after them, then taking care of my sisters and their shares in the business after our grandparents passed, and caring for my mum and you too. It may seem like I'm complaining, but I'm not. Once the business is sold, I'll no longer need to take care of my sisters, Camilla, and you. I promise I'll be thrilled to support you as you begin your adult lives. So I've been successful with 2 out of the 3 significant women in my life, not too shabby. Now it's my time. And guess what? I see this entire episode of betrayal and divorce not as a setback, but as a chance for a fresh start. A new beginning focused solely on myself." "That's great, Dad. Truly. If you're sincere, that's fantastic," Joan said. Jane was more skeptical. "Dad, what exactly does this mean? A new life? Are you considering working for another pharmaceutical company? Or are you thinking of buying a farm?" "That's a valid question, and I don't have a clear answer yet. I haven't worked out the details, but this new chapter will be filled with activity. My plans include running marathons, climbing mountains, crossing the Atlantic, scaling the Alps, embarking on safaris. I've got a whole list of adventures I want to undertake. And who knows? In the process, I might meet a wonderful woman who shares my interests." "Wow, Dad, that's amazing," both daughters exclaimed, looking at him in amazement. This was their father, not some youthful adventurer. "Did all these thoughts really come to you on the drive here from Charlotte?" Jane asked. "Well, partly. I've also been up nights, thinking about various things. Sure, I could drown my sorrows in drink and self-pity, but I choose to seize this moment to the fullest." "Believe me, I'll be fine," Max assured them, parting with more hugs, kisses, and tears as he made his way back to Charlotte in his gold Mercedes. Immediately after Max left, the daughters reached out to their mother. "Hello," came a weary voice from the Tars household. Joan turned her phone to speaker. "Mom, it's Joan and Jane. We just finished breakfast with Dad, and he's told us some upsetting news." "Oh? What did he say?" "He mentioned divorce and attributed it to your unfaithfulness." Father elaborated a bit, yet that basically covers everything. "Really? Oh, my dears, this is difficult. We've been a pair for such a lengthy period, And now, this blunder, indeed, I've committed a grave mistake. Actually, several, but I believe we can get past this. I just need to give your dad some room, Mom, Joan intervened. Look, Dad mentioned divorce. He wasn't hinting at fixing the error, Mom. He brought up cheating, yes, in a manner he's not wrong, but it doesn't imply we can't repair our relationship. I assured him I'd do whatever it takes. Mom, Jane spoke up. You seem to be ignoring the reality. He informed us he consulted with a divorce lawyer already. He was explicit about there being no reconciliation for you. Both Joan and I aren't choosing sides, but it's essential you confront the facts. A heavy sigh was audible from the line. Joan and Jane shared a glance. Had they made the right decision coming to Charlotte? After a pause, Camilla finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I understand. I've ruined everything and destroyed our marriage. I believe your father hates me now, and rightfully so. My actions were despicable. He suggested I should also see a lawyer, and he wasn't mistaken. I'm sorry, my daughters. I know this is hard on you too. Mom, we're okay, Joan. Reassured, we will get through this, and Dad's doing his best. You need to take care of yourself now. It sounds like getting a lawyer is the right move. Jane and I can come to Charlotte if you need us. Thanks, my loves. That means a lot. I'll recover. I just need some time to come to terms with my actions. They concluded the conversation, still unsure about what to do next. It's quite ironic, Joan observed. We're more worried about Mom, the one who caused all these problems, than Dad. They kept talking and decided not to return home but to let their parents sort things out on their own without their interference. California, in her Charlotte home, felt remorseful after her discussion with her daughters, hungover from the previous night's gin. She knew she had to get up, dress, and leave her house to distract herself. Contemplating buying more gin, the doorbell rang. Approaching the door, Camilla saw a young woman who seemed to be chewing gum. How can I help you? Camilla asked. Are you Camilla Tronda, married to Max Trunk? The woman queried. That's me. What's the reason for asking? Camilla responded. You've been served, said the woman, giving Camilla a folder full of papers and taking photos. Excuse me, Camilla exclaimed as the woman returned to her car. Camilla retreated inside to pore over the mysterious folder. The sight of the first document's title almost made her faint. A divorce petition. Remembering Max's advice to seek a lawyer, as she sat looking around the kitchen they once shared, she realized their happy moments were overdue to her mistakes. Camilla was right. The rift between her and Max following her act of disloyalty never mended. Years on, while seated in the grand ballroom of a fancy hotel, observing Jane waltz with her newlywed partner, Camilla's thoughts wandered back to their teenage years. She recalled deeming life challenging, filled with an overload of activities, intense adolescent drama, and an abundance of boys who were either too harsh or, in her eyes, overly generous towards the girls. Max was perpetually absorbed in his duties as an assistant, and his profession as a lawyer was monotonous. Those days were strenuous, yet now she found herself yearning for them. She remained at the same legal firm, engaged in the same tedious tasks. Camilla, your wine, said Carl, the friendly middle-aged lawyer with a bit of extra weight and thinning hair, who had accompanied her to Jane's nuptials and celebration. The bride looked stunning, reminiscent of her mother. Thanks, Carl. Your kindness is appreciated, and thank you for the wine. He was a decent man, someone she could consider marrying if he expressed interest, but it was evident he did not. However, Max was a figure she couldn't overlook. Fresh from a mountaineering trip in Nepal, Camilla noticed he now mirrored those ancient Greek deity statues, sun-kissed, in prime physical shape, and even more handsome than she remembered. Presently, he was happily chatting with Joan and her companion, with a woman by his side as radiant and athletic as Max. Joan had shared that Max encountered this woman during another mountainous expedition in South America, and since then they had been adventuring, sailing, and climbing together for several months. This realization made Camilla feel uneasy. Camilla, Carl tried to get her focus. Yes, Carl, Camilla, it might be time for us to leave. You've played your part as the bride's mother well, and pining after your ex-husband here doesn't serve you well. And to be honest, it's not good for our friendship either. Carl, your thoughtfulness and correctness are appreciated. Allow me to say goodbye to my daughters, and then we can go." Camila hugged and kissed her daughters, wished happiness for the new couple, and managed to overlook Max and his striking companion. As she left the venue, Max caught a glimpse of Camila, experiencing a surge of regret for what was lost. While he watched her leave, Joan asked a question. "I'm sorry, Joan, what was that, Dad? Remember that unique gold Mercedes you drove to see us at Duke for that breakfast with Jane and me? What happened to it?" "Oh, Joan, that's a long story I'd rather not get into. Let's just say that peculiar gold Mercedes was a loan from a friend which I eventually returned. I think she sold it truly. It was a misfortune of a vehicle with that." Max shifted the conversation to their next mountain escapade. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss the chance to keep your partner faithful, and stay tuned for the next story, which promises to be even more captivating than this one.